fantastic. I welcome you again to the Greater Baltimore Church. My name is Phat Vuong, and this is one of our amazing seniors, Essien. We're about to bring you the word. But before kicks us off here, talking a little bit about Limitless. Come on, so the teens, we talked about the topic that we wanted to discuss today and kind of continue throughout the fall and winter. And Ime's going to kick this off, but I wanted to share a little bit about Ime. He's taller than me now. I think he's always been taller than me. But I've actually known about Ime for 16 years. Ime is what? You're 17 now. Yeah. My first interaction with the Essiens, I'd been a Christian for like several months. I'd shown up to a teen devotional together with Maryland and Virginia churches, and someone had asked me to share my testimony. After I shared my testimony, I came down from the stage, and who approached me but Essien, right? Ime at that point is like a year old. Al comes up, he's like, bro, I want you to take one of our sisters on a date. And so the Essiens set me up on my very first date. I don't know how Ime's related to that, but that's my first memory of running into him. But since then, he's grown like exponentially in so many different ways. But I'm so proud of Ime. I think all humor aside, I've seen Ime grow so much through the years. You probably know Ime as happy-go-lucky, a fun guy, but I get to see all the other underbellies of Ime. Which I won't share, but some of the great things I get to experience with Ime is his insight. He's a man of such great insight. As we sit down and study the Bible with other teens, Ime tends to just catch like these really key things about people's character or key things about scriptures. And I find myself, after he shares, like, okay, that was good. Did you get what Ime just said? And I feel like it was great. Ime, thanks for being here. And Ime lifts the heavy spiritual load sometimes as we get together. I'm so proud of Ime. Even as we've worked together in this lesson, I've seen him in the past couple of weeks grow so much, and even evaluating himself as he's looked at the Word of God and what we're going to talk about today. So without any further ado, let's give it up for Ime as he brings us.
Good morning, church, and welcome to our annual teen-led service. It's nice to see you guys all here. We'll be reading a passage out of Job 33 in the Old Testament, so you can start turning your Bibles over there.
Come on, Amen.
I just want to give you guys some background on the scripture. Job is going through some challenges and trials in his life. He's lost his home, his family, his children, his wealth, and his faith in God is dwindling. He's been cursing God and has now gathered his 4 friends to hear his cries. Elihu, the youngest out of his 4 friends, the youngest, that's like the key part in all this, has waited and is now ready to speak. Unlike Job's other friends, he's speaking directly to him, and he's confident in the advice he's about to give because it's from God. And he's about to say this. So let's just read in Job 33, 12 through 14. This is Elihu speaking. But I tell you, in this you are not right. For God is greater than any mortal. Why do you complain to him that he responds to no one's words? For God does speak, now one way, now another, though no one perceives it. Elihu is explaining to Job that God is amazing. He's working behind the scenes, but Job does not see it. So why does Job complain about the absence of God in his life? Because he's lost everything, and he doesn't understand why. Elihu reminds Job that God is working, but in a different way. Elihu goes on to condemn Job's attitude towards God and talks about God's greatness, his limitless powers. Instead of focusing on Job's response to his problems, Elihu tells Job to rather focus on God's greatness. In Job 36, verse 26, Elihu states, "How great is God? beyond our understanding. The number of his years is past finding out. Again, in Job 37, verse 14, Elihu states, listen to this, Job. Stop and consider God's wonders. God sometimes speaks in ways that is challenging for us to understand. He comes across as limitless, all-knowing, infinite, all-powerful, and all-capable. Sometimes to really understand what God is saying to us, we have to care deeply about Him. We especially can't get caught up with our day-to-day life or challenges and trials like Job. We have to listen carefully to God speaking. So I ask you today, what stops you from fully understanding God's limitless powers and caring about what He really matters to Him? Is it your house payment? Is it your car bill? Is it your kids? Is it your marriage? Is it your job? Is it not having a job? Is it not having money? Is it your midterm exams? Is it not having a car? Don't we all have something that holds us back? What keeps us on the surface and distracts us from God? We need to refocus ourselves on God to hear how He works in our lives. Personally, there's a ton of things that get me sidetracked from really listening to God. Praise distracts me to the point where I caught off guard by a few words of affirmation. I can take to heart statements like, good job, and you're doing great, and think, I don't need God, but that's not true. I'm not doing this on my own. God's on my side also. I also lose sight of the fact that God makes all things possible because He's the one that gives me strength. Also, I can get obsessive with recognition of my accomplishments and leaves me wanting more. I'm forgetting what God truly wants for me to accomplish. School is one of the last big struggles for me. I can get caught up with the popularity, the grades, the sports, the clubs, and everything else that makes me look good. These things will try to fill me up, but they won't. Only God can fill that empty hole in my life. We all have to remember God's limitless powers through the good times and bad. We can't get distracted by day-to-day life events or challenges. We have to listen patiently so we can hear God speak. I think Job states it perfectly in Job chapter 30, verse 20. You guys don't need to turn there, but it's just a quick statement. It's, I cry out to you, God, but you do not answer. I stand up, but you merely look at me. Don't we all feel that way sometimes? The great thing is that God is constantly speaking and listening to us. We just have to ask deeper questions. We have to all become men and women of questions. We can't become frustrated and bang our heads on the wall when we don't get our way. We cannot become complacent with how life is treating us. We have to ask God to show us His limitless powers. I think my sin is really made evident with my relationship with my parents. I tend to shut down when I become frustrated with them. I don't try to understand what's going on in my own heart. Instead of asking questions humbly so I can learn, I just become focused on how I'm feeling and what I want to do. Obviously, the sin here is pride. I don't want to listen to my parents who God is using to speak in my life. My parents are just trying to show me how I can change and become more like Jesus. If I humble myself and listen, I will fully be able to hear God's word and direction in my life. So ask yourself, who is God using to speak to me? Am I listening to the voices that God has put in my life, or am I letting my pride silence them? My main practical lesson for today is to reflect on how God speaks to you and who He uses to speak. For Job, God uses his 4 friends but only one, a lie was worth listening to. Again, only one of his friends. Listening may involve finding someplace quiet, free from distractions, especially from your phone. That distracts me the most. This will help you clearly hear what God wants for you in your life. Also, when seeking advice, you have to ask deeper questions. In your prayers, you also have to ask deeper questions. It's about wrestling with God to figure out how He can use us. We can't simply use our own strengths and abilities to face challenges. We have to use God's limitless power. I leave you with this encouraging scripture in Psalm 147, verse 5. Let's turn there together. It reads, "Great is our God, and mighty in power. His understanding has no limit." With God on our side, we're limitless. Don't limit God and what He can do for you and through you. Again, don't limit God.
I'm so grateful to be able to follow after Ime. I don't know how he does it. I'm sweating, I'm dripping. He stays pretty cool up here. Ime, I appreciate his points. Ime and I spent quite a bit of time thinking through what God was teaching us, what God was showing us, as we were looking at this idea of limitless. And both of us ended up, I don't know how much Ime really knows this, but he helped me so much and even figuring out my lesson for today as we shared examples in all the different ways of what Ime was talking about in terms of really listening to God. Because as we were talking about God's limitless power, like, of course God's powerful. Of course, well, this is what's great. That's what's great. We thought about all these amazing things that expresses how limitless God's power was. And I'm like, well, there's no argument. Like, I don't know what we're talking about here. Because, like, this is so obvious. And both of us realized, you know what? The issue is really us. God's limitless power is there. But the question is, are we listening? And I appreciate Ime presenting and kicking off this topic so well. Again, thank you so much, Ime. You know, the idea that God is always speaking is connected to this idea of limitless. Because I think for us, when we speak, when we talk, there's not necessarily authority or power connected to what we say. But when God speaks, things happen. Right? You look at Genesis and He speaks and molecules that form light come into existence. Right? He speaks and things divide. He speaks and world comes into creation. It's amazing. God always speaking is so powerfully connected to this idea of limitless. As I continue this idea, let's turn to our Bibles to Matthew chapter 13. We're going to read in Matthew 13, verse 1 through 23, as we wrap up today. You know, it is an honor working with the teen ministry. There's not a ministry quite like it. But we get to work with all of the families. We get to be at their homes. They cook for us. They have us over. That's one of the best things. Sometimes they can pay for gas. Don't you want to be a team leader? That's right. No, but we love the youth and family ministry. We love seeing the teens grow up. And the interesting thing is, you're all part of the youth and family ministry. The teens, from a young age, they watch you guys. And they see how you are. And you are the examples of who God, of what faith looks like and what men and women look like who follow God. So thank you for your part in the youth and family ministry as well. Let's look at Matthew chapter 13, verse 1 through 23. Like you may say, stay away from your cell phones, they're distracting. Matthew chapter 13. It says in Matthew chapter 13. It says in verse 1, that same day Jesus went out to the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it while all the other people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. I'm going to stop right there for a second. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this idea of limitless and how we can perceive limitless. I think it's interesting. Jesus is a figure that the Jews have been waiting for, literally for hundreds of years. And as he performed miracles, people thought, here he is. Here's the Messiah. Here is the Savior. And crowds would gather and to hear what he had to say. Man, is he going to overthrow the Romans? Is he going to free us? Is he going to raise up our nation and help us to be a great kingdom again? And Jesus, of course, sees the crowds, and what does he talk about? So a farmer goes out and sows seed. And I imagine, as you're sitting in the crowd right now, and you hear this statement, you're just thinking, is this like the opening act? Is this the comedian before Jesus shows up? Who is this guy? Right? And as you hear that, I imagine this idea of limitless doesn't populate your brain as you think about corn crop or seeds growing grass or whatever you grow. You listen to this and you're thinking, I do this for a living. I didn't come here to hear this. God is limitless, but do we see who he is? I think sometimes Jesus spoke in these parables, and he's going to explain it in this passage. But a lot of times, the limitless power of Jesus is hidden under so many things, and we can assume that we know. And we can hear a few words, right? And then think, man, what is this? And miss out on the limitlessness of God. The amazing thing is God is limitless. And Ime and I debated whether we wanted to talk about all the incredible things about God. But that's no mystery. It would only take a little while for us to figure out, wow, God is amazing. God is limitless, but we are the bottleneck. Does God's limitless power pour through our lives? Do we hear him speaking? I imagine, again, as Jesus spoke, a farmer went out to sow his seed. I imagine this is what it looked like. People are just like, huh? There's that one guy with the wide eyes. He's like, what? Right? And let's read on. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. And then a couple people are like, I think I need to go. Some fell in rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. And then a couple more people. I think I gotta go walk my cat. I don't know. Maybe I need to wash my hair. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. I think we know this one. Let's go on. Right? But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. What kind of farmer is this? Right? And I think the crowds thinned out as Jesus spoke. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. And I think people thinned out as they heard this. Because you've got to imagine, we read this, right? We think, of course, he's going to go on, he's going to talk about it, he's going to quote Isaiah, he's going to talk about what parables are all about, then he's going to explain it. It's going to be amazing, right? But if you were sitting here listening, and if I came up here and started talking about the weather and agricultural patterns and what temperature it's like this time of year, if you weren't familiar with our regular church culture, I think if someone invited you here this Sunday, you might go out in the hall and maybe check your messages. You might go and be like, I think my engine's running. I'm going to go check that real quick. I'll be right back. I'll be back in about 45 minutes. And then he goes on and he speaks. I'm going to finish the passage. And it goes on. It says, Jesus continues. Still other seed fell in good soil where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. The disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak in parables?" He replied, "Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For the people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, understanding with their hearts in turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. And this is the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. You know, I think it's interesting. So often we can hear things. And I think even if you've been in the church for a while, there are passages you can hear. And I know in my heart, I've been in this position where I think, you know what? I think I know what he's going to preach about. You know, and I can, okay, I'm just going to listen. I got this. You know, and I don't know if you're doing it. Maybe I'm the only guy who does this. I try not to do this. And I try to think, you know what? There's always something new. I try to tell myself, you know, God's always trying to help me to understand. But the challenging thing isn't when it happens in here. The challenging thing is when we do it outside. When we open up the Word of God. Or when someone approaches us and talks to us. You know, and I think among spiritual circles, there are certain words that are just like, oh, you know what? He's going to pull me aside and I bet you he's going to talk about my pride. And he's like, bro, I want to talk to you about your pride. Knew it. You know, and it can be one of those things where you can be like, gosh, I know what's coming. You know, and it's easy to think, man, we know what's coming. I've heard this before. Or to have lessons in life and think, you know what? And miss the limitlessness of God. Because we assume we know what the message is already about. You know, the disciples, they're interesting. They hung around. They're that one guy, you know, with the eyes open but stuck around. And it says in Matthew 13, verse 10, the disciples came to him and asked him, why do you speak to the people in parables? And there are two things in this passage that are so helpful. They came to Jesus and they asked. They came to Jesus and they asked. You know, Ema introduced this idea that we have to be a people of questions. We got to come, we got to ask questions. Deeper questions. I'm going to talk about deeper questions today. You know, again, this idea, they came and they asked. We've got to be people who come and ask, and we've got to come and ask boldly. Because Jesus is the source. But how often are we spending time really asking Jesus? Really begging him to tell, man, Jesus, you said you would answer any prayer I prayed in your name. God, answer this for me. You know, and beg Jesus, ask Jesus, are we doing this? Do we explain and do we talk to Jesus and tell him what's going on? And you think, well, if I did that, then, how much can I say in 15 minutes? And therein lies the problem. Right? And some of our prayer lives need to grow and stretch on so we can talk to God and really ask him all the questions that are on our mind and on our hearts. Come to Jesus and ask. Man, for a promise like, you can ask me anything. Are we taking Jesus up on that promise? Are we asking? And like Ema challenged us, are we asking deeper and deeper questions? We're going to talk a little about this idea of deeper questions. Because Jesus, you think about it, so many times throughout the scriptures, Jesus engages people. So many times he could walk by and like wave his hand or wiggle his nose or not even acknowledge people and heal them. But he doesn't. Jesus asks them questions. Hey, what do you want? Crippled guy, crippled for 38 years. Jesus, what do you think I want? Blind guy, Jesus, what do you want? I'm blind, are you serious? But Jesus engages and he asks this question because he's showing us, man, he doesn't just want us to get things. Right? This passage talks about one who hears the word and understands it. Jesus desires for us to understand his limitlessness. Because that will provide so much more than the quick answer sometimes we want. You know, like Ema was saying, are we listening to the voices of the people that God has put in your life? I think if God answered all of our prayers on a whim, we would just become arrogant and prideful people. And a lot of times God's like, no, I want you to ask questions. I want you to engage in the person beside you. And I want you to learn so you'll understand. Not just know, not just have. The question is, what is God trying to ask me? Or what is God trying to tell me specifically? You know, in Matthew 7:7 it says, ask and be given, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened. Jesus expects us to initiate first. You know, I want to talk a little bit about this idea that Ema introduced, deep questions. You know, are we asking deep questions? Deep questions, I think, sometimes can be very misleading. I think sometimes we think about deep questions and we think, you know, those deep questions are those, there's only a few people I know who can ask really deep questions. You know, and you'll talk to them and you're almost like preparing. What are they going to ask me? Like, and they're going to say something profound and you're like, whoa, mind blown. Let me write that down. I'll get back to you tomorrow. That was deep. But I think deep questions aren't all about profound ideas, the latest thoughts, or whatever. I think sometimes depth is all about one layer at a time. Sometimes it's a simple question, but it's relentless. It never stops. And that's how it gets deeper. You know, how do you peel an onion? And one layer at a time. Some people are like, I don't peel onions, I just chop them. They probably can't understand. But you peel it one layer at a time, that's how you get deeper. Deeper questions. And look at this picture. Who is this? No. There was color when I was born. Before me, there was no color. This is my grandfather, and this is my dad. I had a much bigger head than him. For whatever reason, I was born with some issues. I was a sickly baby and I had a huge head. That's why I don't keep pictures of me as a baby around. Kind of crazy looking. But here's a picture of my grandfather and my dad. You know, recently I had an opportunity to visit my dad in Florida. He moved down to Palm Bay. He's retiring down there. It's warmer. He enjoys it. And so, you know, I sacrificed and I could visit him. Or pass through Orlando on the way. You know, but we had a chance to go visit, and I was so impacted, and I learned so much about deep questions from Phat. One of the benefits of being married to her is that she has helped add so much to my family life, to a nearly non-existent family life that was being pushed. You know, great brothers in the church here constantly helped me. Like Dave Brown would always be like, "Hey, gotta visit your dad, man." This is when he was in Virginia, and only 2 hours away. You know, and so many people, Al, Scott, Doug, everyone would tell me, "Go visit your dad," and I'd visit. But I think very much like how we often miss the limitlessness of God, it was easy for me to miss my dad. I'd visit him, but I would miss him. I wouldn't really catch him. I don't know if that makes sense. You can spend time with somebody and really not know them. But I assumed, you know what? I've known my dad my whole life. I know everything. Well, what's new to learn about my dad? You know, but it's interesting. When Faye spent some time with him and started asking questions. You know, and I was so surprised by all the things that I learned. You know, but it was interesting because the situation was challenging. I came down there and I always have to pray a lot before I visit my dad. We don't have a great relationship, so there's a lot of stuff I always have to pray through. I hadn't spent the time in prayer that I really wanted to be honest. And I felt unprepared, but I felt everything else was prepared. Got a hotel room in advance, saved money, got the car rental, $7 a day. Amazing. Even with the insurance, I was spending less than $50. I was fired up. Had the plane ticket months in advance. Got a deal with Southwest, one of those like sales that they have that last for a day. And I got everything. And I was excited. I was getting a little bit of away time with Faye. And I felt super prepared, but spiritually felt kind of unprepared for it. And lo and behold, I think God was trying to talk to me. But I wasn't listening. So the flight gets delayed 2 hours. Instead of leaving at 8, we leave at 10. It ends up like 10:30 something. I call the rental place just in case to make sure my rental's still available. It's fine. We arrive, of course, there's no more cars. The hotel reservation doesn't exist for some reason. It's 1 a.m. I'm angry. I'm pretty furious. I learned that as a single person, I was angry by myself. I would step away, I would neglect myself. I would present myself back to the world as collected. I can't do that unless I go to the men's room, and I just did not need to go to the bathroom when I was with Betty. But it was hard. I felt like just all the sin was exposed. It was so hard for me to hear reason or logic. And then I hang with my dad, and I'm just like, I am not ready for this. I don't know what to do. And Faye just starts asking, hey, how you doing? I'm like, and he responds. He's like, I'm good. I'm tired. I'm going through all this hard stuff. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so she starts asking what kind of hard stuff, and she starts asking about his health and asking about all these things, and there are medications my dad is taking that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know he's going through this stuff. But it doesn't end there. I had my aunts and uncles who were there. That she starts asking these questions, like, how did you get to America? And I was like, on a plane. In my head, I'm just thinking, come on. But I guess she's gonna do this because she's new. And so they don't say a plane. They talk about all this stuff in their childhood. They talk about the end of the Vietnam War and running from communists and what it was like to be chased around Vietnam, and what it was like to be shelled and shot at. And I learned about this history, and I was like, oh my goodness. I come from such a rich past, and God has been protecting my family for so long. And my dad told this story, and I don't have the time to tell you, but it was the first time I ever saw him in tears. I've never seen my dad cry, and he wept as he told this story about people dying and suffering during the war. And I thought, I don't know any of this stuff about my dad. I thought, you know what? And they were such simple questions. Hey, how did you feel about that? What were you doing? How long did you stay? My dad pulls up all these pictures, and he walks us through all these things. I learned so much about my dad in 2 days that I had never known about my dad in 33 years. But sometimes deep questions are those relentless questions that you keep asking again and again. And you find new things as you keep asking them, but you don't ever stop. You gotta keep asking these questions. And I think, and to be honest, if I can challenge you guys, I think as a church, we've not built a great culture of asking deep questions to each other. And I think it reflects in our prayer life. We can ask each other closed-ended questions where we're waiting for an answer and we don't get it. We challenge each other. We don't know how to ask great open-ended questions. And so it affects how we ask questions to God. And I realize the questions I don't ask my dad, I make me think, what about my Father who is in heaven? Am I asking him these questions? Do I ask myself these questions? And Faye's questions were simple, but they were persistent. And she was unoffended by their responses. And she was caring, and she was curious. And it helped me to see, wow, the nature of God, of deep questions is not complicated. It does not need to be profound, just persistent. We've got to keep on asking these questions. I'm going to share another analogy with you if I have a little bit of time here. When you look at this, what is this? Shovel. Incorrect. It is wrong. This is a post-hole digger. Right? In 2007, I had to build a fence for my house at the time my family owned. And I was like, I got it, family. I'm gonna build the fence, and I'm gonna dig all the posts with this. And it took me all of about one hole to realize this is not a good instrument. And so I got one of these guys. What is this? I can't hear you, but it's also a post-hole digger. All right, this is a long steel spike, and you use it to dig when the shovel can't go past it, and it helps keep your hole nice and deep, but it goes low without having to make the hole wider. Does that make sense? So you chisel these parts of the hole down so you can fit the post down. So I dug about a foot, and I'm like, done. I got some advice like, nah, man, you have to dig at least 2 feet, and maybe 3 if you want the fence to stand for a while. I'm like, oh, man. So I go and I get another tool. What's this? A post-hole digger. And this helps me to take all the dirt out of the hole that the chisel thing dug out, right? So now I'm just cranking. I'm like at 2 holes now. I'm so excited. My post-hole digger. I'm not moving fast enough, so I go back for another tool. What is this? A post-hole digger. All right? So what this does, this actually takes the dirt out for you. As you're turning it, it like cranks the dirt up. It's the coolest thing in the world. Right? I'm at 3 holes. I'm like, it's been 3 days. I'm like, this is so slow. So what's this? A post-hole digger. All right? So this thing thing does the same thing, except for there's a gas motor at the end. You put gasoline in it, and it digs it for you. So I'm cranking. I've got like 5, 6 holes. It's 3 days. I'm like, the ratio's way better now. I'm so excited about my post holes, and then it just hits this grinding, sparking noise. And I'm like, what is that? I live in the mountains at this point. I'm in the Shenandoah Valley at the time, and I'm like, and now the post hole digger is, instead of digging holes, it's just like pushing itself back up. And it's like hitting things and just like, and I'm like, that's crazy. And I'm like getting all this resistance. So what do I do? What's this? This is a post hole digger. I could not afford this. I did not get this. And so I kept on trying with the post hole digger, but this thing is amazing. You know, it has like an arm, it's pistons, and it's crazy. But Home Depot didn't have one, and so I didn't know what to do. So I kept on trying. Finally got some advice, right? Crazy thing, getting advice about things you have no idea what you're doing. And the guy's like, well, you live in Harrisonburg. Most of Harrisonburg is bedrock. You're just going to hit large boulders, right? You're going to hit all these large things. And so they're like, you should probably dig and see how big this rock is. And if you can move it, that'll help. So I dig 1 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet. This thing's like 6 feet both ways. I'm like, the fence boards aren't long enough. I can't make the fence poles any wider apart, you know? And so I go and I get this. What's this? No, it is a post hole digger. All right? This is a Harrisonburg post hole digger. And I just start jackhammering this giant rock, and I create these holes in this boulder that's underneath my yard. And I start digging these holes, and it's amazing. So post hole digger, right? These are tools you dig with. When you look at this, what are these? Post hole, no, these are not post hole. You look at these tools, what are they? Wrong. Right? These are also digging tools. But you're digging for something else. Right? If you've ever seen something like this, an excavation site, you get to a point and you can't use a jackhammer anymore. You can't use a hammer, you can't use a shovel, you can't use a post hole digger. Right? You've got to change your tools. A lot of times we've got to learn how to ask deeper questions, and sometimes it's learning how to ask different questions for different times. Or the same question without stopping. The gentle but constant pressure. Or firm and constant pressure, right? It's a different application. Sometimes it's the same question but gentle. Sometimes it's the same question but harder. Right? But we've got to learn how to get deeper, more varied in the way that we ask questions. You know, there's a saying, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem is a nail. Right? But we can't be that way in our prayer life. We tell God the same things over and over and over again. And we ask God the same things over and over and over again. And amen for persistence. But man, let's be people who get deeper with our walk with God and learn how to ask Him questions and then wait and listen. Right? And listen and search for answers in other places. Sometimes the deep question is sitting and listening and allowing other people to bring it to you. One of the questions I've learned to ask my mentors and my elders is that, hey, if you were in my situation, what question would you ask? What would you ask if you were me? What would you look for? What would you do here? And you got to pray and you've got to ask for advice. You know, deep questions. We've got to be men and women of deep questions in our prayer life and with each other. You know, sometimes there can be a bluntness in our questions if we're not careful, and a harshness that's unnecessary. I think sometimes we don't even ask questions. We don't take the time. And we can look at people and assume. And that is the worst. Sometimes we can compare each other to different things. Well, this is not like this ministry. This is not like that ministry. You don't do it like the other guy who talks to me. And we can dismiss limitless power that is moments away from changing our lives. But we refuse to listen. We refuse to ask the questions that He may ask. What's God trying to tell me here? We refuse to take the time to beg this question over and over and over again. Sometimes we ask the wrong people questions, or the wrong people questions. We ask people questions more to create drama and rumors than to really help ourselves find answers. And are we asking deep questions? I appreciate the scripture that Ime shared. For God does speak, now one way, now another. Though no one perceives it. No one understands it. We've got to be men and women who are asking deeper questions. We've got to learn how to grow and how to do this. We've got to learn how to beg God. And I'll give you an example of how to keep asking. In my life, for instance, an example for me is my anger. It was interesting, and you've probably heard me preach about this quite a bit, and I've been pretty hard on myself, and some people say you kind of cut that out, and it's kind of, after a while, it kind of gets challenging, but it's hard for me because it was a tough lesson for me about my anger, and it continues to challenge me and humble me. But a couple years ago, I got challenged a lot on this, by teens, by parents, by my other ministry leaders, and I remember, I'm like, what in the world is going on? It's a good question, right? Never bothered to answer it. I just asked that question. I was frustrated. It just produced more anger. And I remember things would go by, and I was like, let me just work harder. Let me just do more things. Maybe if I baptize more people, or maybe if I start studying the Bible more people, things will go away. I'm serious. It was a subtle but crazy thought I had. But nothing would happen. And weeks would go by, and then, I had a friend who would get together with me, and he would challenge me and ask me, so what have you done since we got together last and we talked about this sin? And I rattled off a bunch of things. He's like, well, I'm surprised you haven't spent time asking more questions. And all I could do is sit and kind of just look at him. And he's like, what are you thinking? Because it's really frustrating for me to just sit here and stare at you. We've been talking about this for weeks. What's been going on? You haven't investigated your heart, your life. And I was like, I just didn't know what to say. I realized I was not great at investigating. I was not great at asking great questions. So I spent time looking through my journal. And it was March at the time, so I decided to look through every March entry for the past couple of years. And I don't know if God had planned this or orchestrated this, but almost every day, on the same day from at that time it was 2011 or 2012 until 2009, for 3 years, I almost wrote the exact same thing every March. Really struggling with harshness, react a lot to people, need to pray so much more. And I highlighted it, and I take all my notes in Google Docs, and so I made comments. And I was like, gosh, it's taken me a year. No, you know what? And this year I went back and looked 2 more years, and I was like, wow, I've been struggling with this for a while. I've not been listening, not asking deep questions, and asking God to expose and show me. And it resulted in an incredible sin that hurt a lot of people. But God had been trying to tell me gently for years, but I was not listening. I was not asking God questions. I wasn't asking Him to expose and show it to me. So I spent some time asking myself questions. Simple questions, but deep questions. And layer by layer, I asked, Father, why are you so angry? And I had so many answers. And I was like, how do I answer all these questions? So I picked one. Because I'm busy. Why are you so busy? Because I feel like no one's helping me. Why is no one helping you? Because I'm not asking. Why aren't you asking anyone for help? Because I don't trust people. I've been disappointed. Why don't you trust people? Why have you been disappointed? Because I'm so critical. Then I hit this rock, this grinding noise, and my post hole digger stops. And I'm like, and I didn't know what to ask after that. Why are you so critical? Why are you so critical? Why are you so critical? And I didn't know what to do. And even now, it makes me wonder, why am I so critical? Why do I see negative things so easily? Why do I miss so many positive things? And I couldn't find another answer to this question. I couldn't find the next question. And I just had to fall on my knees and I had to ask God, God, show me. Teach me. God, show me what's wrong. Show me what I'm doing. I started asking teens, how do you feel about my anger? How do you feel about my criticalness? I feel like I'm harsh. They would share things with me. And I would ask another teen, hey, same question, different teens and different answers. And I felt so broken. I was like, oh man, how long have you felt this? How long have you been feeling this about me? I'm so sorry. And I would apologize person to person. I called old roommates and they would share with me and I was like, oh my goodness. How long have you felt this about me? It's like, I love you, man. I remember that conversation. I felt, man, you're such a great friend. How could you not talk to me about this though? And he's like, because I love you and I thought you would just grow out of it. And he apologized. We had this two-felt prayer over the phone. And I was like, man, it's the same question. How did you feel about my anger? And I learned so much because I asked God this question. Are we asking these deep questions? Are we searching deep into our souls? Because these questions take time. And don't ask these questions alone. Sometimes we climb mountains and we harness ourselves to each other because we're climbing high heights and we know we need the help. But when you descend into those low depths, you need help too because those are treacherous ravines deep into your soul and you'll get lost. in the darkness without some help. Bring people with you. They'll bring lights. They'll bring food. They'll encourage you. Kid you not. During these hard times, now, you know I love eating, I love cooking, but it was so hard, you know. People would help, and they would offer to buy me things. I remember Andre would take me to the movies, and I'd be like, thank you so much. You don't know what this means to me. It wasn't because I couldn't afford it. Actually, I couldn't afford the movie that time. But it still meant a lot to me. You know, God speaks now one way, now another, but no one perceives. Let us be a people who keep asking. We need to keep asking. We need to keep digging. Because God's power is limitless. God's power is limitless. And the reason I chose this passage, it says a farmer went out to sow his seed. Because God's limitless is displayed in this passage. His generosity is so clear. If you don't see it, I'm going to show you real quick. Where did God cast the seed? Where did he put his word? Everywhere. God put his seed. Some fell in the Phat. Some fell in the rocky soil. Some fell among the thorns. Still others fell on good soil. God is so generous. You are not here by accident. God is casting his word to you right now. He wants you to hear. He wants you to understand. He wants you to know. He wants transformation in your life. God is limitless. And he has enough seed that he can cast it anywhere. You think about it, you look at a farmer. If I was up here, I almost wanted to, but I didn't want the Chesapeake Arts Center to get mad at me. I was going to get a bag of grass, and I was just going to start scattering seed. Right? And you think, Phat, that's crazy. What do you expect to happen? But that's the generosity of God, isn't it? It's crazy how generous God is. And his word that cost the blood of his son, the life of his one and only, he scatters so freely. There's nothing going on in your life where God would withhold his promise from you. There's nothing that you have done that he would not forgive and extend out hope. He scatters his seed. What you're going through, what you're thinking, there's nothing that's hopeless. There's nothing that's too hard for God. He has enough. He is limitless in his power. He is limitless in his love. God is always speaking. He is always scattering his seed. He is always spreading his word. God is always giving. God is always working. We've got to be men and women of deeper questions. We've got to keep asking. Let us never stop talking to God. Let us never stop asking questions. Let us never keep growing in this area. And God will continue to show us things. I promise you, they will be hard. But I promise you, if we keep asking and we're faithful to God's limitless power, we'll see amazing things happen. You know, today we're going to see the outcome of someone who persevered. And she's going to make her way back here. You know, I do want to extend a warm welcome to her parents, Mr. Carl and Miss Shirley, her parents who are here to join us for this service. We're going to see Cheyenne get baptized today.